Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. It looks like things have been heating up over at Cloud Imperium Games, the studio behind Star Citizen.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely been a busy few weeks over there.
That's an understatement. We've got quite the collection of sources for this deep dive. Some breaking news from Insider Gaming about some big changes over at CIG, a video all about the upcoming Alpha 4.0 update, and we even got a personal letter from Chris Roberts himself.
Sounds like we have a lot to unpack.
All right, so let's start with that bombshell report from Insider Gaming. They dropped some pretty big news about major layoffs happening over at CIG. Apparently, it involves several top-level executives.
Wow, yeah, that's major. And this comes right on the heels of those QA staff layoffs back in November.
Exactly. So it's got everyone speculating, what does this mean for the future of the game?
Well, it's hard to know for sure without more info from CIG, but it definitely raises some questions, right?
Absolutely, especially when you consider that Star Citizen has been in development for, over 12 years now?
Yeah, something like that. And it's raised hundreds of millions of dollars in crowdfunding from fans. So these layoffs, especially at the executive level, well, they could point to some deeper issues potentially.
Yeah, are we talking financial pressures here?
Possibly. Or maybe a major change in their overall strategy.
That's true. And then there's that whole thing about Chris Roberts' wife, Sandy Gardner. Didn't she used to be pretty high up at CIG?
Oh, right. I'd almost forgotten about that. Yeah, she was the VP of marketing for a good while in the beginning.
So is this like a comeback for her?
Maybe. It's all just rumors at this point, but her return, if it happens, could signal, maybe a renewed focus on marketing or community engagement. Could be a sign of bigger changes in leadership even.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. And then there's that internal memo that Chris Roberts sent to the CIG staff. Apparently, he's really hitting home this idea of hitting deadlines, especially for Squadron 42 and Alpha 4.0.
He used the phrase laser focus, right? Which is an interesting choice of words for sure. Makes you wonder, is this a genuine attempt to streamline development?
Yeah.
To finally deliver on those features they've been promising.
Well, yeah. I mean, everyone's been waiting for Squadron 42 forever.
Right. But then you have to think, is this more about damage control? Are they reacting to the recent negativity? Trying to appease those backers who are starting to get, let's face it, pretty frustrated.
I think it has to be a little of both, right? I mean, it's hard to imagine that these layoffs aren't connected to those deadlines in some way.
Yeah, that's a fair point. But Chris Roberts has always been incredibly ambitious. Maybe this really is just him doubling down on his vision, trying to get everyone back on track.
I mean, is that even possible at this point?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is this a sign that CIG is finally getting serious about delivering a finished product? Or is it just another PR move? Time will tell, I guess.
I guess we'll have to see how things play out. Speaking of things we can look forward to, though, you sent in a video about the upcoming Alpha 4.0, and man, it looks amazing.
Oh, yeah.
It's packed with new features, a whole new star system to explore, server meshing is finally happening, and I mean, finally, new ships, alien creatures, they even showed off some pretty incredible caves.
Server meshing, that's huge. I mean, if they can actually pull it off, it'll be a game changer for Star Citizen and for online gaming in general.
Yeah. It's been in development for what feels like forever.
I know, right? And it's not exactly a simple thing to implement. You're essentially trying to connect multiple servers together seamlessly so players can have a more persistent, a more immersive universe. No loading screens or annoying transitions.
It's going to revolutionize the way we play. Imagine a universe where thousands of players can be interacting simultaneously, traveling between star systems, taking part in massive battles. It's mind-blowing.
It would be an incredible step towards that vision that Chris Roberts has always had. That truly living, breathing universe he always talks about.
Right, and speaking of Chris Roberts' vision, you sent over something really interesting. A personal letter from the man himself.
I did, and it's quite the read. He reflects on the past year, outlines his goals for the future of the project, and even addresses some of the, let's say the criticism that's been directed at the game.
So it's not just a marketing fluff. Huh?
Oh, no, not at all. He actually takes the time to acknowledge the challenges they faced, the delays, the bugs.
And there have been a lot of those.
Definitely. But he also reaffirms his commitment to delivering on his vision and outlines some concrete steps they're taking to achieve that. So he really emphasizes this idea of playability moving forward, It's like the foundation of his vision for 2025.
Playability, huh? Okay, so what does that actually mean, like practically speaking?
Well, he breaks it down into 3 core pillars for 2025: performance, stability, and content.
Okay, I like it. But let's unpack that a little bit. So performance, is he talking about frame rates? Server performance?
All of that, yeah, and more. He wants to make sure that Star Citizen runs well on as many different computer systems as possible. So that means things like reducing those long loading times, making the gameplay smoother, that kind of thing.
And stability. Man, every Star Citizen player has a story about running into bugs and glitches.
Oh, tell me about it. I've lost count of how many times I've crashed to desktop. But Roberts acknowledges that in his letter,
Yeah.
He knows it's a huge frustration for a lot of players.
Yeah, it's hard to get immersed in the universe when you're constantly worried about the game crashing.
Exactly. So they're putting a lot of resources into squashing bugs, making the servers more stable, basically just making the game more reliable.
So less 30Ks, less weird glitches, less frustration overall.
Fingers crossed, right? And then there's the content pillar.
Right, because what good is a beautiful, stable, smooth-running universe if there's nothing to actually do in it?
Exactly. He talks about adding new missions and activities, expanding existing gameplay systems, and fleshing out the lore of the Star Citizen universe.
Yeah, he specifically mentions those big narrative events, like what they did with Siege of Orison and Jumptown 2.0.
Right. Those are really cool.
Yeah.
Gave players a sense of purpose, a reason to log in and work together.
I think it was a smart move on their part. It gives the game some much-needed direction, and I think it really resonated with the community.
Totally. And he even talks about wanting to involve the community more in shaping these events, gathering feedback, maybe even using some player-created content in the game.
That's really interesting. It's like they're trying to create a more collaborative development process.
I think so, which is kind of a throwback to the early days of MMOs when the community was much more involved in shaping the direction of the game.
It's a good way to build hype and keep players invested in the project, too.
Oh, absolutely. Especially for a game like Star Citizen, which is, entirely funded by its community.
Speaking of the community, Robert spends a good chunk of his letter just praising their dedication and passion.
Yeah, he talks about the record-breaking attendance at CitizenCon this year, how many hours players have poured into the game.
He seems genuinely grateful for their support, and he acknowledges that they've been pretty patient throughout the years.
Oh, yeah. He doesn't shy away from the fact that it's been a bumpy road, the missed deadlines, the technical issues. But he assures everyone that they've learned from their mistakes and that they're committed to doing better in the future.
It's one thing to say it, though, right? It's another thing to actually bid it.
Exactly. And that's the big question that everyone's asking. Can CIG actually deliver on its promises this time?
I mean, they have a bit of a reputation for over-promising and under-delivering.
That's fair. But I think there's also a sense that this time could be different. With this new focus on playability, this commitment to stability, and this renewed emphasis on community feedback, it feels like they're finally on the right track.
We'll have to wait and see. 2025 is going to be a big year for Star Citizen. Either it's going to be a year that the game finally starts living up to its potential, or it's going to be another year of disappointment.
One thing's for sure, all eyes are going to be on CIG.
Well, before we start making predictions about the future, let's go back to that Alpha 4.0 video you sent. Server meshing is obviously a huge part of that update, but there's a lot more to it than just that, right?
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. Alpha 4.0, it's bringing way more than just server meshing to the table. I mean, we've got that whole new star system I mentioned earlier, Pyro, that's finally going live with this update.
I know, right? It looks amazing. From what I've seen, it's going to be a really cool place to explore, too.
Yeah, they really went all out with this one. 6 planets, 5 moons, all sorts of different environments, They've got icy plains, dense forests, volcanic wastelands, even underwater biomes, I think.
Wow. Yeah, it's like they took everything cool about space exploration and just crammed it all into one star system. I mean, they even showed off these massive cave systems in the video, huge caverns with these crazy bioluminescent plants. It looked kind of like something out of Avatar.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
Hopefully without the giant blue aliens trying to kill us.
Yeah, that's true. Although, I mean, some new alien encounters would be pretty cool, right? Speaking of which, they are adding some new creatures to the game with Alpha 4.0.
They are. What kind of creatures?
Well, they've got these herbivores called quasi-grazers. They kind of look like a cross between a deer and a rhino, I guess.
Yeah.
But they come in all these different shapes and sizes.
Oh, wow, cool.
And then there's the copon.
Those cute furry things, right?
Yeah. I've heard you can tame them, maybe even keep them as pets on your ship.
Okay, now that is awesome. I want a space pet.
Who doesn't? But it's not all about exploring new planets and collecting space pets. They're also doing a bunch of updates to the gameplay systems in Alpha 4.0.
Oh, really? Like what?
Well, they're reworking the mission system, for one thing, trying to make missions feel more dynamic and, more engaging.
I'm all for that. Some of the missions in the game right now, they can get a little repetitive.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And
Yeah.
they're also finally rebalancing the economy, which has been kind of wonky for a while now.
Oh, good. That definitely needs some work.
Yeah, it feels like you can make
Yeah.
money way too easily right now. Just kind of breaks the immersion a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. I think they want to create like a more balanced and rewarding gameplay loop where you actually have to, work for your credits.
Yeah, make it feel like your decisions matter.
Exactly. So between the new star system, the gameplay updates, and, server meshing,
Yeah.
Alpha 4.0 is shaping up to be a pretty massive update.
Yeah, it's going to be huge. And 2025, with all this stuff coming together, it's going to be a very interesting year for Star Citizen.
You can say that again. I mean, between this new update and everything that Chris Roberts outlined in his letter, it kind of feels like a turning point for the game.
A turning point. Really? I mean, I'm excited, don't get me wrong, but after all the delays and the broken promises, it's hard not to be a little skeptical.
Yeah, I get that. There's definitely a wait-and-see attitude among a lot of players. But hey, maybe this time will be different. Maybe this is the year that Star Citizen finally lives up to his potential.
I can only hope, right?
That's right.
Well, that about wraps it up for this deep dive. We've gone from the boardrooms of CIG to the far reaches of the Pyro system.
It's been quite a journey.
As always, we want to hear from you. Are you hyped for Alpha 4.0? Are you buying into Chris Roberts' vision for the future of Star Citizen? Or are you still on the fence? Let us know what you think in the comments.
This is a game and a community that thrives on passion and discussion. And let's face it, a healthy dose of skepticism.
That's right, and honestly, that's what makes it all so fascinating. We're all on this journey together, waiting to see if Star Citizen can truly become the game we've all been dreaming of.
And until then, we'll be right here, keeping a close eye on things and dissecting every new development as it happens.
So until next time, keep your eyes on the stars, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.